Okay, so for these notes, we're going to start with something called inequality notation. No, sorry. We're going to start with interval notation. Interval notation. An interval is when you do parentheses or brackets. Parentheses if we have a unbounded interval. Brackets when it's a closed interval. So let's look at this first example. This is my x-axis, so I have a left bound and a right bound. On my left bound, my arrow keeps going forever and ever. So it's going to go all the way to negative infinity. It's going to approach negative infinity, but of course we can't really touch it. So that's why it's called unbounded, because it's going to keep going forever and ever. So unbounded is parentheses. And then on the right side, my bound is -3, and that one has a closed circle. Closed circle is bracket. Closed circle means that we're equal to, so I do bracket. Parentheses means not equal to. We can't be equal to infinity because it's not really a number, so we can't be equal to it. Now for my next example, notice I have the same idea almost, but my arrow is going the opposite way. That means it's going towards positive infinity. Positive infinity is always on the right side. It is also not bounded or not equal to, because again, we can't not touch infinity. Now on my left side, I have a 5, but see how it's open to? That means it's also not equal. So we are going to do parentheses. So brackets when it's equal, parentheses when it's not equal to. Just like that. The next problem that you do, I want you to try it first. Pause the video, try it, and then come check your answer. Okay, on the next example, I start at -1 and I go all the way to infinity. At -1, it's not equal to, so I do parentheses. That's my left side. On my right side, I go to infinity, and it's also not equal to, so I do parentheses. Now, this is what a test question could look like. We're looking for a domain. Domain means I'm looking at the x-axis, so only this right here. On the left side, this is my point all the way on the left side. It goes through -3, and it's closed, so it's equal to. So at -3, I should have a bracket. And then on my right side, this is my right side, I go through +2, and it's open, so that means it's not equal to, so it's D. D is my answer. So now let's look at these other examples. The difference between these bottom examples is that they're both circles, either open or closed, but these are circles. The top had arrows, so it means we're not going to go to infinity on this bottom half. This first example starts at -1, and it's not equal, so parentheses. Stops at 3, and it's also not equal, so parentheses. The second example, however, is equal because I have a closed circle. Closed circle means it's equal. Means it's equal. Equal means brackets. And you should have a little cowboy and angel diagram. I uploaded it to Google Classroom, and it kind of tells you cowboy and angel. Cowboy is closed, angel is open, and what notation to use for which one. So this one right here also has one of each. So we have a closed circle first. So first it's equal, and then it's not equal. For this one, we're looking at range now. Range goes from bottom to top. So we start at the bottom. My lowest point is -5, and it's closed. So we can cross out those two answers. And then my highest point is 4. And since it's not really an open circle, we say that's a closed circle because it's just a point. And a point is a closed circle. It's just very tiny to see. So my answer is B for that one. Now we're going to move on to inequality notation. For inequality notation, inequality means we use inequalities. We have the less than, you can make it with your left hand, and we have the greater than. This first one, I have x is less than or equal to -3. It's equal because my point is closed. Equal because it's closed. And then I get my less than sign because that's where my arrow is going. It's going to the left. Left means my numbers are getting smaller. So it's less than. And they also need to match. Like this arrow has to match that arrow, if that makes sense. So the same thing for these two examples. Notice my arrows are going to the right side now. So they should be like this for both. So x is greater than, no equal sign because it's open, 5. X is greater than, no, this one has an equal sign because it's closed, -4. I just used these arrows to get my inequalities, right? That. This one's the same thing. I'm using N because that's what the graph has. My arrow is going to the right, so it's greater than. Open because there's no equal. It's open, and it's a -1. For my domain, I go from left to right. Notice on the left side, I go to -infinity, but inequalities does not use infinities. Instead, we only use one inequality. So that means x, my arrow is going to the left, so less than, and my starting point is 1. Equal sign because it's closed. So that's my answer. Now, the bottom examples do have 2 endpoints. That means we're going to have 2 inequalities. And we're always going to use less than. For example, I have x less than, it's -1 less than x less than 3. So here's where I got the numbers. Here's where the inequality comes from. Oh, it's not x. It's 3. Here's where the number comes from. And the reason they're both less than is because, for example, if I have an answer here in the middle, that's 1. We say -1 is less than 1. And then we can also say that 1 is less than 3. So that's why we use less than for both of them. And instead of having them separated, we just combine them together because it's an and. The points are together. I'm going to see that in the next few weeks too. The next question is asking for range. So we go from bottom equal to y to top, close circle at 4, like that. We don't use this number because this is not the top of my graph. You always go to the highest point. This one, again, is the same thing. My left side is a 1. Line, it's equal to because it's closed. X, no line because it's open. 5. This is range from bottom. This is my bottom. It looks like it's -2. And it's closed. And here's my top. It's also closed, so it has to be equal. So C. That's it for inequality notation. And if you can do inequality, you can do the last one. It's set builder notation. I'm not going to do all the examples because they just depend on inequality. I'm going to just do a few. So this first example, if you can do the inequality notation on the middle. So my inequality is greater than or equal to 2 because the arrow is going to the right and it's closed. And then all I have to do is do the fancy stuff around it. Set builder notation just does curly brace, x such that, this means such that. Curly brace, and that's it. That's your answer. So all you have to do is put the inequality notation inside of that fancy stuff. And that's set builder notation. So this bottom example here goes from -5, it's open, so not equal to 15, closed, so equal sign. And then once you have your notation, you add the fancy stuff around it, and that's it. So that's why I don't really do these examples as much, because it's just adding that crazy stuff around it. Now I do want to explain some of these because some people were having issues with it. For inequality to interval. Interval means we need parentheses and bracket. On the left side, I don't have an equal sign. Not equal sign means we're talking about the angel, and then angel has parentheses. So parentheses, -1, 8 parentheses. That's how we go from, use the angel and go from one notation to the other. This next one is the same idea, inequality to set notation. Well, set notation is the same thing as inequality, but with the fancy stuff around it. So it looks like this. For this one, we're looking at interval notation. So interval goes from left to right. It's open, it's closed. So bracket. Notice interval does not have letters or inequalities on there. Inequality notation. Inequality means I have inequalities such as less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. I only have one circle, so that means I only need one inequality. And my arrow is pointing to the left, so my inequality has to point to the left. Open, so no equal sign, and it starts at 10. So x is less than 10. For this one, we're going from interval notation to inequality. Inequality, well, we have two bounds, and you might have to draw it if you want to. I have a closed circle at -3, closed circle at 3. So I do have two bounds, and they're both closed. We always use less than symbol, so there's my answer. If you have to convert to a graph before you can do the actual notation you need, please graph it. It's better to see it sometimes.